Hey guys, week 3. I'm going to roll into some skeletal system stuff this week, and then we'll probably do muscular system next week, so you kind of have an idea. There are two different parts of the skeletal system. There is the axial skeletal system, and it sounds just like the name that they intended to have. So we rotate on an axis, which is our vertebrae. And then there's the appendicular, which sounds like it does, or appendage. So we're going to first, this part, the first assignment is going to have more to do with the axial skeleton and then connective tissue, just because there's a little bit more bones that we're going to cover in the appendicular skeletal system. But I'm going to use my little cursor here to kind of point out the axial skeleton. So it consists of 80 bones, and that is comprised of your skull, your vertebral column or vertebrae, and your rib cage and sternum is what essentially makes up the axial skeleton. And then here's a different view from the side. Just the curvature of your vertebrae is very unique, how it kind of goes in, out, in, and then actually kind of rotates back down, back behind the pelvis again. And all this moves together very well. It's designed to absorb the weight and pressure of your body, absorb gravity as you go down. So there are obviously some serious injuries that can occur. Down through the vertebrae runs your spinal cord, which comes from your brain. If that gets damaged in any way, that can actually affect everything from that point down. So if something gets damaged in the spinal cord here, everything below that point, there is no sensation or control that the brain is unable to do. So obviously very important to take care of that. Most common injuries that we have today is probably going to occur down here in our lumbar, just probably from lifting too much weight or sitting over time. So as we talked last week about the issues where you have imbalances, a lot of those, one of the most common ones is an anterior pelvic tilt, which essentially is that your pelvis tilts more forward. It's usually because someone's gained a lot of weight, their gut maybe is heavy, and it puts a ton of pressure back here on the discs in the lumbar. And so that's just a common injury or thing that can happen back here on that end. All right, so I do want to just go ahead. I made some notes for myself here. I just want to point out the ones that you're going to see on the quiz for today. So the bones that are in the axial, again, they're your skull and then your vertebrae. So you have 3 different sections of your vertebrae. And let me go back to the other picture here. You can actually see that just a little bit better. But you have your cervical vertebrae, which essentially runs down from the base of your skull down to the top of the clavicle or scapula area. So this is your cervical. Then you have your thoracic, which actually has a more of an outward turn on your spine. And then down below is your lumbar, which actually consists all the way down to here, although I'm not going to quiz you on the ones that are down here. So you have the skull, the cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, and then your lumbar vertebrae here. All right. So those are 4 things that you'll need to know. And then the only other 2 that we're going to quiz you on is the sternum right here. So you see the number 11 right here, the sternum, which is right there. And if you notice this little point down here right below, that's actually called your xiphoid process. So you won't need to know that for the quiz, but if you ever actually have to give CPR, you go through that process of doing that. That's something that when I was trained to do CPR, that's what they actually you actually look for to be able to press in the correct area when you're giving chest compressions. And then the last thing is just your rib cage. So you have skull, cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, then you have your lumbar, we have your sternum, and your rib cage. So that's essentially the axial skeleton of what you're going to have here. So this will be the end of the first video. There'll be one more talking about connective tissue.